As you can see, we have a special in-person episode this week, together with my father, who's visiting us for Thanksgiving, a holiday which neither of us celebrate, but still worked out nicely. And welcome to the studio, our unofficial studio. Actually, we get a lot of comments about whether my background is real or not, and I think this week will serve one purpose to show that it is a real background. I didn't take into account how much more of the office I would have to clean up this week, because not just because you can see it, but also because the camera's catching twice as much as usual. So that was
Well, I hope you didn't work for it 7 years like Yaakov.
yeah. Uh, well, there's still a part of the office you can't see, and that you can see.
Thank God.
The Parsha Vayetze really encapsulates Yaakov Avinu's entire life outside of Eretz Yisrael for the first time when he goes to his uncle Lavan's house. The other stories that come up in this parsha until he decides to leave Lavan's house. Unlike other weeks, previous weeks, where we maybe had the opportunity to zero in on a specific part of the parsha, this one's a little hard. There's a lot of flow here. There's no breaks. It goes from when Yaakov arrives at Lavan until he leaves. And therefore, this week we will speak about the more thematic kind of ideas as opposed to zeroing in on a specific part of the parsha.
I agree. I think that actually what the Torah want to tell us is indeed about the thread that is going through all the stories about Yaakov and these unbelievable adventures, so to speak, in his life. And I think that the Torah from the beginning, Vayetze Yaakov mi Beersheva, and we know that the background is he flee to save his life because his brother want to kill him, until the end of the parsha, when he's on his way returning to Eretz Israel and meeting his father-in-law in when he's very upset with him for taking the daughters and the family without telling him. I think the Torah, with the many stories in between, want to give us a very clear idea about the difficulties of Yaakov in his life and how he dealt with it.
I think it is interesting to see how, uh, in a way, Yaakov leaving his father's house, leaving his brother, um, it is interesting to think about. Maybe he kind of had to be isolated in order to build his character.
It's a very interesting thought because indeed, many of the great things that happened to the Jewish people happened not when they were sitting on their land, when they were free of external stress. Think about the Talmud, the Gemara, which is most likely the greatest work of the Jewish people, not in their land, it was outside. And maybe this is one of the messages of our Parsha, that the resilience of the Jewish people is inspired by the land, but not bound to the land.
The Torah does its own kind of context setting. As Yaakov leaves the house of his father, uh, we come upon a story which is very popular. It happens to be that in art, and people like this story a lot. And that's the story of Yaakov's dream about the ladder with the angels going up and down. What do we make of that story?
I think this is a highly important question, maybe to understand Jewish history and the Jewish mission. Interestingly enough, we just spoke about the difficulties in the Parsha, all the difficulty that Yaakov is going through his life. But as you mentioned, the Parsha starts with a vision. The Parsha starts with a dream, where the angels are going up and down, and there are many interpretations to what does that mean. But interestingly enough, the Parsha also ends with encounter with angels. So we have here a very interesting sandwich of the Parsha. We have an encounter through a dream with angels, and ending the Parsha with angels. And in the middle, the difficult life of Yaakov. And I do believe that this parsha is teaching us something extremely, extremely important. The Jewish people are people who are encountering angels, visions, dreams, lofty ideas, closeness to Hashem. But in real life, it sometimes materializes with many difficulties that we have to go over. Because if our expectation is because we are capable of encounter angels, you might think a person who can encounter and can see angels in the beginning of the parsha and at the end of the parsha, he should be a person that face no difficulties in his life. His life should be supported by Hashem. He should have enough money to support his family. Everything in his life is going to go smooth. But no, the parsha is teaching us exactly the opposite. Being able to be close to God sometimes means that because you have difficulties, שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. Sometimes the shevet, the road, that you can hit someone, then the support of Hashem is noticeable more than the good times that a person is going through. And maybe the message of the parsha is indeed that our life involves many difficulties, many challenges, and we have to know from the beginning and at the end that we have a divine protection. And if you think about Yaakov himself, think about the names that he carried. Yaakov, which is maybe his real life, which always, from the moment he was created, Yado Chedet Ba'akev Esav, a struggle with Esav. But at the same time, we have Israel, which is more about our vision, about mission, about our goals in life. And we have to go with the name of Yaakov and with the name of Israel. And this is maybe the core message of this parsha of Israel when we are encounter Malachim in the beginning and the end. It's going to culminate next week when Yaakov meet the Malach and struggle with him. But in the middle, it's going to be all Yaakov, all the struggle that he's going through his life.
It's interesting because we do talk a lot, especially in Sefer Bereshit, about the Jewish people. Which, again, the story of Sefer Bereshit, if you don't read it with an eye towards the future of the Jewish people, it's a nice story, but it's almost, to us, it becomes almost meaningless. I think there's a lot better understanding, a lot deeper understanding we can get when we treat it as a story about us specifically. One of the themes that I love about Sefer Bereshit is this transition from individuals, especially once you get to Parshat Lech Lecha, individuals towards a family, which is what happens in our parsha, and then towards a nation. So there's this metamorphosis that happens in between that. Can you speak a little bit about that and how we see our transition in this parsha? And it's very obvious from the number of people, right? Avraham had one descendant that continued his path, and Yitzchak had one descendant. All of a sudden, we have this exponential growth of 12, which is obviously in order to create the Jewish people.
Yeah, it's a journey from individual, Avraham, Arami Oved Avi, Vayered Mitzrayma, and Yaakov is going to later to Egypt. So it's a journey from individual to a nation. I would say that Sefer Bereshit, the name Bereshit suggests maybe Bereshit bara Elokim. We talk about the creation of heaven and earth, but Bereshit is also creation of societies, as we read in Parshat Noach, and it was not going too well, but it's also the Bereshit of Am Yisrael. The Bereshit is indeed start with a very small cell of Abraham and Sarah, and it growing through Sefer Bereshit until in the beginning of Sefer Shmot, we are going to find a nation. Something that Paro actually defined as a nation. And indeed, Parshat Vayetze is sending a very clear message. The journey from being individual to a nation, the strength of a nation comes from difficulties and challenges, not from just being close to God and God's promises. And this is the core message of Sefer Bereshit. All these troubles that you are talking about are telling us that the Jewish people are not going to have easy life in the shadow of God. actually they are going to have a very difficult life, and this journey continue until this very day. You just have to open the news, the newspaper, and you see it until this very day. Our journey is difficult, but we know that it starts with the vision of Malachei Elokim Olim Veyordim. It will continue with the vision of encountering the agents of God, the Malachim of Hashem, and hopefully one day, indeed, we will enjoy the wonderful promises that Hashem promised already to Abraham.
Yeah, we'll see maybe next week that part of this revelation about the future actually says Ve'alu Moshiim Be'at Zion, and the saviors will come on Har Zion, the salvation will come out. Mishpat et Esav. So Esav kind of makes his way back in there. We'll dive into that a little bit. I don't know. Let's dive a little bit into the Parsha itself. Famously, Yaakov negotiates with his future father-in-law about Rachel, and ends up through trickery with Leah. I think it's almost impossible to read this with the discussions we had last week. The switching of the sisters seems to very much mirror the switching of the brothers in Parshat Toldot. Do you read this trickery of Lavan in the context of the trickery of Yaakov from the previous week?
I think actually the Torah is telling us that exactly continuation of this story. When Lavan respond to the complaint of Yaakov, Ma'asitali, what did you do to me? Lavan is responding, say, לא יעשה כן במקומנו לתת את הצעירה לפני הבחירה. Everyone can notice the irony here. What do they say? Say, "Lo ya'aseh chen bimkomeni." Maybe the place that you came from, like the younger one, is taking over the Bechor. But in our place, it's not working this way. So I do believe that Lavan, in a very sophisticated way, hint that Yaakov deserved exactly for what he did to his brother Esav. And Lavan said, by us, we have like Yashrut. We are very honest. We have a system. First the Bechorah, and therefore you got Leah, and only then you are going to have the Tzeira, Rachel. So I do believe that the Torah here, in a, I would say, with a humorous way, hint that there is a connection between the two.
Very nice. I did see that some Mefarshim say that from a linguistic perspective, Bechira is not really the opposite of Tzeira. Tzeira is the younger. I mean, if you have more than two kids, you wouldn't use Bechira to say the older one. So the fact that the Torah uses Bechira is also from a linguistic perspective telling that maybe he knew.
I think that we learn here a very important message for life. Listen, Yaakov had no choice but to deceive his father. Apparently, this was the only way that he could get the brachot, and if he could get it in any alternative way, he would try to do it. Yaakov is presented to us as Ish Emet, the person of honesty, and we can see it from our parsha, the way he described the hard work for Lavan. He never takes shortcuts. He never lazy. He pays for his own money for things that he shouldn't. If one of the animals were eaten by a predator. I assume that if Yaakov could find another way to get the brachot, he would try it. His hesitation last week to get the brachot in this way showed that it was not like just like a characteristic of Yaakov. But we have to know that even when we do the right things, but in a trickery way, we will pay for it. And Yaakov actually in his life was deceived twice in a very similar way. One with his wives and one with his son. When the brothers told Yaakov that the kutonet, which was all like a plot to convince Yaakov that Yosef died, was quite the same way. So maybe the message is that we have to know that sometimes even when we take the right way, we might pay for it.
Yaakov And the rest of the fathers, Chazal tell us, kept the whole Torah. Now, I never took this to mean literally. What does that mean? There's some of the Torah talks about serving in the Beit HaMikdash, which didn't exist. My understanding is that on a deeper perspective, that we need some mitzvot in order to satisfy Hashem's will. But it does seem like Chazal and later commentaries do take it much more literally, that whatever mitzvah they could have kept, they did. And obviously this kind of flies in the face of the fact that Yaakov married two sisters. And there's I would call it almost apologetics to say that, no, this was only in Chutz La'aretz, this is only when the two wives don't approve of each other, and this was the opposite case famously. But again, from a literal perspective, how do you say the Avot kept all the Torah, that our patriarchs kept the whole Torah, whatever it means, either on a literal level or spiritual level, and then go and do one of the core Gilui Arayot of marrying two sisters?
I would say that if I read Sefer Bereshit, I have more problems with the statement that the Avot kept all the Torah. I would say Sefer Bereshit should be like a proof that there was no Torah before giving the Torah. Take Avram, who served his guest with Basar Bechalav. Take Yaakov in this situation of marrying the two sisters. We do know that a person should never sacrifice another human, the korban. So how Avram did not know it. So we have to dive into the understanding or the idea, or where was it inspired from, that the Avot indeed kept all the Torah. But let's focus on our parsha. Because we know that the person, it's, as you say, the surah. It's a very serious issue of marrying two sisters when they are alive. The Torah allow a marrying sister when one is not alive, but which is unique, which is all the arayot are permanent. This is something that is not.
There is a famous Gemara that says that for anything that is asur, there's a mutar way to do it. So for arayot, illicit relationships, the Torah's way of doing it in a kosher way, like to have at least that avenue in theory, is through the mitzvah of yibum. But that's exactly an exception, as you say.
Right. But I want to suggest something that to me seems very, very simple. Because this exception, it means that there is nothing inherently wrong in marrying two sisters. Because if it would be like, let's say, a sister, a mother, there is something inherently wrong in this kind of relationship. But as we said, with achayot, it's not the same. Like you see that after one died, you can marry the other one. And here I want to suggest that indeed, inherently, there is nothing wrong in marrying two sisters. Maybe there is some benefits to it. The two sisters, they love each other from before. In the environment of the Torah, that there was no problem to marry two women. Maybe two strangers to each other might have many more problems than two sisters, that their love is natural and they grew up as two sisters. And maybe if we would write our Torah, we would see no problem with it. But I believe that I would say maybe all the mitzvot in the Torah, I cannot prove one by one, but I have a very strong feeling that many of the mitzvot in the Torah find their roots in Sefer Bereshit. For example, all the Gmilut Chasadim that we have, we learn it from the story of Avram and his guest and Lot. Many mitzvot that later the Jewish people received on Har Sinai, their roots is in Sefer Bereshit. So maybe after the Torah saw how much grief the two sisters, Rachel and Leah, had living with the same husband, maybe the mitzvah of the prohibition to marry two sisters when they are alive is to avoid and to prevent what happened by Yaakov. In other words, for Yaakov himself, there was no Isur at all. You don't need to go to the Ramban who say that it was outside of Eretz Israel. Indeed, marrying two sisters might be, I know that it sounds radical because today it's against everything that we know, but at the time of Yaakov, it was maybe kind of mitzvah, kind of the preferable situation. However, based on the story, the Torah comes later and say, no. If two sisters like Rachel and Leah run into so many grief and troubles and challenges, how much more we have to be careful not to repeat this story. So this solved the whole issue. You don't have to go to all kinds of excuses and to be apologetic about it. It's actually, that's the root of the Isur.
Always a pleasure discussing the Parsha, especially in person.
Here.
And we look forward to seeing everyone in next week at future weeks. We thank everyone again who comments. A lot of people asked. This week we're releasing it a little bit later in the week because we wanted to do it in person. But thank you to all the ones who were asking us. It gives us a lot of encouragement, and we promise to release future episodes a little bit earlier in the week. Hey, Shabbat Shalom, and looking forward to spending Shabbat together.
Shabbat Shalom.